a little presentation for y'all.
Yeah, I'd love to learn about ALC. That's completely new to me.
It's in the presentation.
Should we just do the presentation?
Do you all
wanna
want to see like a
learn some stuff?
slideshow?
We made it. Thea made
If you made it, then we
a
should definitely see.
lovely little slideshow. We're a big fan of visual things.
All right, make sure you hit. Did you hit share screen?
I'll let you do it all.
Oh, do I need to do a?
Oh, host
thing to
disabled
say?
it. So
Or
who's
hold on.
hosting?
I'm enabling it now.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Okay, you should be able to share now.
Share. Go. Can you all see that?
Yes.
It's
Cool.
adorable, Thea. You did a great job.
So we're our resilient community ALC. 3, 2, 1. Okay.
It's just the two of us currently. So I'm Nicole and this is Thea.
Yeah. And these are our 4 logos that we have for the things that
Because we do so many different things.
Yeah.
The top left one is our like school I don't know,
Everything.
the everything logo. The bottom one is ALC specific. So like we set up a business organization called Our Resilient Community, and we offer things more than just the ALC school program. We offer like sex ed classes.
That's the other one of them.
We offer some summer camps
That's the other
and
logo. Yeah.
special meetups and things like that. And our goal is to grow that and have our own building space where we are connected to other people in the community and maybe become like a co-working space and an arts community and things like that. So we want that to build. But
Yeah.
we're also an agile learning center. So we're part of the ALC network, and it has its own marketing logo brand. And ALCs are very cool. It's like the style of, I guess it's the style of education we're doing.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into it too much, I guess. 'cause
There's
we
a
have
slide
whole
on, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're our resilient community and we do these things. The ALC is definitely the main thing we do. We spend our most time and energy on the school. And then the sex ed and the camps are
like extra stuff we're doing.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about all that in a second. I'll keep going.
What are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about Orca because it's Our Resilient Community ALC. So we're called Orca, but our mascot is not an orca. It's a duck boy.
The kids are coming up with things.
Yeah. And then we're going to talk about like
what it means to be an ALC.
Yep. And then we're going to talk about being a queer-centered school in the Southern United States and how fun that is.
It's very difficult.
Yeah. And then we're gonna open up for discussion, and I have some proposed topics for like if
anything
you want.
But feel free to pause us, and if y'all have something you're curious about,
yeah,
we can talk about whatever's specific to y'all too.
Yeah.
Because there's just a few of us.
And this
here.
it's only 9 slides. So the goal was just do a little overview of our school and then
we can chat.
Spend time with discussion and stuff. So how did the school start?
We've gone through a roller coaster with the whole COVID stuff too. So pre-COVID, Thea and I were working at an ALC called Atlas ALC, and it was lovely. During COVID, we briefly were working with a group, and it was called Soulshine ALC, and that's how we met Camden. He visited us.
It was on a farm.
When we were on this lovely farm. It was amazing. We had such a wonderful time. And then during that whole process and stuff, we ended up deciding a need in our community was to have a queer-centered school. We had a significant portion of our kids, LGBTQIA plus. So we were like, well, how do we, let's see if we can serve this community in Athens, Georgia, specifically.
Yeah.
So we went on to do this.
Yeah. And we had this opportunity to also ask, like, what if we made a school that was in line with like the queer-centered values? And so I guess we're doing like an experiment still, and we're still figuring it out.
We're a year in now.
Yeah. And we're actually doing a celebration on Thursday for our 1-year anniversary. That's gonna be really cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Can you say a little bit about what age groups your school is for?
Yeah. So this current group, we do six as young as 6 and as old as 17. But with this particular model, our youngest is currently 11. So we're getting more teens. So we have 11 to 17 right now, which is lovely. We're having a nice time. Before, we've really had a lot of elementary schoolers and middle schoolers, but now we're middle and high school, and this has been a fun transition for us. Also, my 4-year-old comes and hangs out during the day and she has a good time. But
and for our sex ed, we chunk it by year. So like today we did a sex ed class for 15 to 18-year-olds. And we also have a series for 12 to 14 and then one for 9 to 11. So it's that one is separated by age, and that happens on weekends. And then our camp is
separated by age too.
Separated by age, but it's like 11 to 14 and then 15 to 18 for camps.
Yeah. So our school crew right now we're relatively small, and we've been small. Each school we've done has been less than 25 kids is our group, but it would be cool to grow. This is just what's worked for us. And there's only 2 of us, so we are keeping it small.
So when we asked ourselves, like, what are the values that we want like our school to have? And it was the same values that I think a lot of ALCs have, with like intentionality, authenticity, community, learning that's fun, goal-oriented, collaborative. So like a lot of play, collaborating on the curriculum with the students. And then this school, I think we especially focus on justice and queer culture is like what sets like the extra values that we have on top of the ALC values. ALCs are usually pretty justice oriented and pretty like queer safe, but ours is queer centered, so it is different.
I think so many of our alternative ed schools share the same values, or long-term are headed in the same direction. I have noticed it seems like schools want to focus on like, I want to be a nature-based school, or a sustainability, or a justice focused, or something else. And it feels like we all share these values, but it's like, how are we going to enact them? Or what are we going to put at the top maybe? Because we can only focus on so much as like a small group of people. And it would be really cool to continue to be able to all go that way. Like I would love for our school to be on a farm in the woods and incorporate all of these other elements, but like it's so hard to get there without funding and network and support, That's just something I'm thinking about too. Anyway, go ahead.
So then we came up with our mission, and it's just we make spaces for people to pursue passions and learn in community. And then we have the school, which is an ALC, and then the sex ed, the summer winter programs. And then we also provide justice-oriented fellowship for queer people and allies, advocates, and accomplices. And we work with the local Pride organization to do certain activities. We're at all the queer events, and we sometimes have
we try to be part of the community.
Exactly.
And we're all public about that. I mean, Athens is a really liberal town. We have a big Pride and a big,
mostly liberal.
Well, outside of us is not great, not safe, but here we're pretty safe. But this also involves we talk about real things with our kids. I don't know that I think you're going to get to that. But,
we're going to get to those things.
We talk about laws, and the kids have options to maybe go to certain protests if they're up for it. And we've taken trips to the Capitol and learned more about, standing up for themselves and people in their community.
And they've done amazing things, and we'll tell some stories shortly.
So ALC specifically ALCs are cool. And the structure is really nice. So I don't know, do y'all know about agile project management? Have y'all heard about that? It's a style of project management. I think that's where the agile term came from. But there are certain values in that involve respecting people's time. We will gather for meetings and build out our time around goals that are really specific. And what happened is the people who came up with this model took the tools for the project management and they applied it to education and students. And it aligns with the values of the majority of our organizations. So there are a few things that all ALCs have in common. And there are these things we've listed down here. There's a meeting. It's called a set the day meeting, but it's like a morning meeting that you might have with any group of kids. And it involves a board a set the day board, right?
Yeah.
And a set the day board looks kind of like a Kanban board, if you know what that is, but
Or
it has
like a weekly
a
calendar.
calendar. It has like the days and the times, and people might make it look a little different and very fun for kids. But then all the blocks are open unless there's special offerings happening. So at our morning meeting, we all come together and we say, hey, here's what's happening today or this week. And Thea is offering math for this, for middle school geometry on this day and this day at this time in this place. And we like put it up on the board. It's very visual. And anyone from the community can put an offering on the board. So in the past, we've had recurring offerings like tea time read aloud, where we make tea and baked snacks and we read little kid books to the little kids, and it's adorable and lovely. And that might meet every Wednesday morning at 10. And then there might be a parent who's going to come offer something cool, and that will be a special time, and that one won't change. A 6-year-old could come in with a bin of Legos that day and be like, I'm going to offer a Lego building project at this time in this space, and that will get added to the board. I don't know, the day will get built organically based around what people's passions are and respecting people's time. So if Thea is offering something special, she can put it on the board in advance and it will stay there. Other things are more flexible. There's also a category called See Me, where it's like, I'm not going to put it on the board specifically. I'm not reserving a space for it. But if you want to come make paper airplanes with me, or if you want to learn, I brought a volcano and we're going to do an experiment, come find me at See Me, and we're going to do that together this time. Nothing from the day is required. It's all optional. If you come in and you're having a really hard day and you want to just read a book on a couch and be cozy, you can just do that, and that is okay. Unless you have maybe a commitment offering that you've signed up for, which is okay too. If we hire someone special to come in, we might make a list and you're going to sign up and commit to that if they're a material spot, things like that. But otherwise, your day is yours, but be respectful of others. And if you tell them you're coming, show up and things like that.
And they also, at the beginning of the semester, each semester, they do a goal sheet with us.
That's not ALC specific, but that is
Oh, it
something that
isn't?
we didn't know. I just came up with that.
Oh,
I know. Yeah, it's cool. We although I've shared it at ALC, then I think it's the thing, but it's not one of the ALC things. But we've made ours more goal oriented, especially because we have a slew of older kids, but we've done it with everyone. But we have a beginning, middle, and end of year meeting with parents where the kids sit down and we talk about what are your goals for the year, be that academic, be that mental health, be that friendship, something else. And we build out like a plan, an individualized plan with each kid and each parent. And we help the kids meet those goals, and we'll check in over the course of the year. And so we might say, hey, Thea's offering a creative writing class this month. You said you wanted to work on this particular writing skill. I recommend you go, or do you want me to help keep you accountable to like showing up to this class? And we have agreements like that we'll do. Anyway, that's set the day, and that happens every day. Another one we have, but you were offerings.
so offerings are just
Offerings are what we call classes, and
Yeah.
anyone can do an offering, and it can be it can be anything. It could be play, creative, art, very serious, focused, academic, whatever. We're going on a field trip. It could be all the things. Instead of having rules in a community that are like created and enforced by the facilitators, we have what's called change up meetings, and this is something that all ALCs do. And it's a way of having the community check in about problems. So this has its own special board, and it involves a process, and it happens. It depends on the school and how much it's needed, but maybe once a week, maybe once every couple weeks. And these meetings are super cool. Everyone comes to them, and you'll write down on a sticky an awareness you might have. That's not pointing blame at anyone, but it's like, my go-to example is, I'm noticing that people are leaving their lunch boxes out after eating, and now we have a really messy lunch table and there's not room for other people to eat. Or maybe we're getting bugs or something. I don't know. I'm noticing ants. This is an awareness that I have. And then anyone can put an awareness on the board in the awareness column of the change up board. And then we talk about an awareness one at a time, and people can say, oh, I'm noticing that too. That feels like a problem. And then we propose solutions to the problem. Oh, what if we remind each other to clean up our lunch boxes, or this can get even more complicated and maybe we talk about things. We agree on a proposed solution and it attaches to the awareness, and then we'll try it out for a week until the next change at meeting. We try out that solution and see how it goes. At the next meeting, we check back in. Oh, how did that go? Was it a really bad idea? It fell apart over the course of the week. Okay, cool. Again, no blame is placed. It's maybe we should try something else this week. Does anyone else have an idea? And we might try something else. And we try to let the kids come up with all of those. And we let them, choose something that we think may not work.
Yeah.
So that we can learn as a group and arrive at these awarenesses and
reflect on like why did that solution work?
And it's a very interesting part of having a community learning space. I love it. And it's really cool and creative.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see how the kids solve problems each year. We've had kids lean into like policing, phone police. One year. There was a phone jail for people who were on their phone. It was the technology debate was a thing for a while.
Yeah.
This year, no one even cares. This year we have language. Oh, people are cussing a lot. That makes me feel uncomfortable. Let's have that conversation. So that's what we're doing now. Anyway, that is the change up meeting, and it's very cool. And at the end, after the awareness goes all the way through the process, we'll have a community agreement, and then the community agreements will be posted on the wall for everyone to see and agree to. And then we can be like, oh, remember, we have a community agreement about that. If you have a problem, though, bring it back up at a change up meeting. And it's lovely. So they work together to solve problems. And then the last thing that all ALCs have in common is a spawn. Spawn is like kind of like a homeroom. And everyone does their spawns a little differently. It's like a beginning and an end of the day check-in. We split up into groups. I think most ALCs, if they're large enough, will split up into groups by age, or, you 5 people go with this facilitator. We've done it in the past by age because we had lots of siblings and we wanted the siblings to be separated so that they could share more authentically and not, they could have like privacy. But at Spawn, we talk about like, how are you feeling today? What's going on in your life? We might play a game. With the little kids, we might play games involving like communication and emotional things, like let's practice facial expressions and like, how can you tell what other people feel, like things like that. With the older ones, we might be like, wow, that sounds like a really big problem you're dealing with your friend. Maybe the other teens can offer you some solutions to that problem. But then we also include, and I guess all ALCs will do, it's like a reflection time. So what are your goals for the day? How did it go? Did you meet all your goals? Do you need any help with this tomorrow? Or how can I support you in meeting this goal? And that happens it's like the thing that holds the morning and the afternoon together. That like, it's like the bread on the sandwich. Anyway, I could keep going forever, but I really like this model and it works well. And you can kind of see how that's like a nice skeleton to things, and you can take it and plop it onto other things.
There's a lot of play.
There's a lot of play.
And because they can put things on the board, our school has like whatever passion is like sweeping them. So sometimes everyone's reading all these books and sharing and like rotating this book series through each other, and everyone's just consuming books or like Legos or working on similar projects together and things.
One afternoon, but then nothing is like set in stone unless you've like made it set in stone either. So like, sometimes we'll just leave free time on the board or like independent projects. And one afternoon after lunch, kids just gathered together and they just picked up instruments and started writing songs. And there was like a jam session. And that started happening every afternoon for 2 weeks. And then there was a band. And then we just follow it. And then they put on a performance at a cool place in downtown Athens for all their friends and family. And they created a logo. Just things spin out of control and the learning happens, and it's amazing. But we just let it. So if they fall into something cool, we just ride the wave with them, and we find out, how can we make this bigger? How do we build on this with them and create offerings and find experts to make that learning bigger?
Yeah. Our teaching style is often let things get out of control and then see where it goes.
Yeah.
Cool. And that's what an ALC is. Cool. Oh, wait, I went backwards. I do that all the time. All right. So we're an ALC, and we've been doing ALCs for a long time.
Yeah.
And over the last year, well, a year ago, pretty much exactly, we became queer centered, like overtly. We kind of were queer centered before, just not overtly. But
We just had a bunch of kids asking us questions and asking for certain offerings.
and I'm trans, so the parents were like, it'd be really cool if my trans kid knew a trans adult. So like we had some students who were there just for queer role models. Not that I'm a
Yeah.
role model or something, but so we were like naturally moving this direction, and our families were all like about this. And then we decided to lean into it so we could, and then we got more students since who like were looking for this kind of space for reasons I'll talk about. But so like a lot of us in progressive education, there weren't other queer schools for us to be like, how are you all doing it? So a lot of this was made from the floor up in terms of like being a queer centered school in Georgia. There was a school in Atlanta for a short period of time called the Pride School, but it was years ago, and they like, we can't find the people who were doing it. And I don't know what it was like there. So, but we did, yeah. So it evolved organically with its own culture, ethos, and holidays. Like we celebrate the queer holidays like Coming Out Day, Trans Remembrance Day, but also this coming week is Fish Day, which is probably the biggest holiday in our school
that they've
culture.
created.
And it's really weird, but it's all about authenticity and intentionality. But there's a pageant and
Really
really
weird,
elaborate,
silly
yeah,
things. that they've
it's
come
weird
up
and silly, yeah.
with. They dress up like fish. It's a
Yeah.
whole thing.
So being a queer-centered school is like, what does that mean? And we've watched it become what it means to us right now with this group. And so it embraces some parts of queer culture that I have listed there. Peer mentorship. A big part of queer culture is like found family, and found family isn't like age divided the way like bio families tend to be. So we have peer mentorship where there's a lot of calling each other like, you're my sibling or my uncle or something. I don't know. It's like they do that, and then they actually give each other support in real cool ways.
Yeah, like mental health support.
And that,
or
yeah.
things like that. Oh, sorry, that's the next one. I
And
wasn't.
it is also like there are parts of being queer that involve like knowing certain things. Like there's a T-tape, trans tape, or like binders. There's a lot of like medications and stuff like that, like that can be hard to access or hard to understand. So like T-tape is a good example of like, you can't figure out how to do T-tape. And if you try to use YouTube to figure out how to do T-tape, it's going to be really hard and confusing. And it's good to have like a mentor who can actually like talk to you about it. So things like that. And then mental health awareness is part of queer culture at all ages. Yeah.
What is T-tape?
So do you know what a binder is?
No.
Okay, so for people who are trans masc, so they were assigned female at birth, but they're trans masc, so they're either like, they might be non-binary, they might identify as a trans boy, but to relieve dysphoria, so having a chest that is read as feminine can give them dysphoria, that makes them feel bad. So they want to present as someone who doesn't have a chest that's read as female. They want to have a chest that's read as male. So a binder is like a compression top that compresses in the spots that'll make it so their chest is male presenting. And then T-tape. So a binder is like a kind of like a tight shirt. And then T-tape is tape that you have to use like a certain oil and stuff, but it compresses with the tape to do male presenting chest. And then you can also use T-tape for other body parts too, to like relieve dysphoria. Yeah. I guess that's a lot of information.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's just different ways of relieving dysphoria that they're sharing with each other.
Yeah, and supporting each other. Like sometimes we'll have kids come in saying, I've been wearing my binder for 5 days straight. And then they're like, dude, don't do that. And they're like, yeah, but I'm panicking. And they'll like talk each other through it. And like, we had a kid come in with he brought in his huge stuffed animal that day. And he was like, I'm not allowed to wear my binder today. And I'm panicking. So I'm going to carry my stuffed animal around all day.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, cool. What's your stuffed animal's name? And this kid is like 12. And, but they're being really supportive of each other doing that kind of thing and looking out for each other. I'm like, good. I'm glad you're not wearing this today.
Yeah. And accountability because if you wear a binder, you shouldn't wear it at night because it does compress. So you should only do it for so many hours a day. And that's where T-tape can be good if you're rotating T-tape in a binder, but binders are a lot easier. But if some kids will just keep wearing a binder, and it can like bruise
can
your
hurt
ribs a little bit
them,
and
yeah.
hurt. So then you have to stop wearing a binder, and then you're going to have more dysphoria. So they hold each other accountable on that. And they're like, take your binder off when you're home. Like in a way that
Yeah,
like it would be
that's-
hard for an adult
Yeah,
to like call it a
they
kid.
like
and be
care
like,
about each
yeah,
other and they're dealing with it together.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
Yeah. And then mental health awareness is at all ages. Queer people are aware of mental health and talk about it openly. I think that's part of like queer culture, and that's good for them who are like if they have struggles with that. And then authenticity and passion. Like a lot of times coming out as trans is difficult, and it's like being authentic, and it could be risky and things like that. So you're like already taking the step of like, I am this person and I'm willing to like step up and say it. So then it also comes out in other areas of your life too. It's like, I'm an artist or like other things. So it's like having this fight for who you are in this way, I think makes it so passion, authenticity in other areas become important too. Elaborate and theatrical humor is, I consider it part of like queer culture in general. And something we talk about is like morals for queer people might be slightly different. In that you hate when I say
No,
this.
you can, it's
Okay.
become a thing now. You may as well just
Okay.
read it.
Okay. So like in mainstream morality, I usually hear that lying is immoral, and like you should never lie could be a thing that some people would say. And that's not like true. People understand like white lying, and it's not like a hard and fast rule.
If it's not hurting.
But in general, like don't lie seems to be a moral thing. But in queer culture, lying has kept a lot of us like safe for our entire existence. And lying is definitely like a tool that we've used in the past and will continue to use to stay safe. So lying isn't inherently, or it isn't seen as inherently immoral in queer culture. It's a tool, and like a hammer, you shouldn't use it to hurt somebody, but it's not immoral to do it. But we do have
We have conversations about that kind of stuff.
yeah, and morale, and something that is immoral in queer culture that I don't think mainstream culture is like as aware of is outing. So outing is when you share someone's identity with somebody else. So like
Without their consent.
yeah, so if someone confides in you that they are trans, and then you tell someone else that they're trans, you've outed them. So that's very immoral to do in queer culture. And it's like a big no-no that our kids, like, they all understand that like hardcore.
It's like a way of being respectful for each other.
Yeah. And it's like, yeah, it's like a very big violation to out somebody. And they know that for like when kids are getting picked up, they're probably getting picked up by their parents, but they might be getting picked up by like an aunt or uncle who doesn't know that they're trans. So even if you say their name to this person who you're not familiar with, you might be outing them to somebody who isn't accepting. So it's like navigating that too is something that sometimes we talk, especially when we're doing like camp, where we don't know the families that well, and we don't know, because we're just meeting these kids and the kids don't know each other as well. So we don't know the families as well and who's picking them up and things. Well, we know who's picking them up. There's like a list of who can pick them up, but we don't know how they are in terms of acceptance of queer things.
And it's just being respectful of what they want.
Yeah. And we always ask when we do awards for them, or I write a lot of awards. I love doing it. But whenever we do like any sort of presentation that's going to involve their name or pronouns, I ask them like, what if this is going to be given to your parents and your parents are going to see it, what name do you want on that document? Because we don't know what they're going to do with it. And like the kid might want a different name than what they usually use on something like that. And that's happened before. And then the last thing about queer-centered school and like queer culture is justice. We fight for things because I guess because we tattoo, but like you all probably know about Stonewall, and that starting like the current like pride movement is kind of rooted in the Stonewall riots. And we talk a lot at school about like violence is never the answer, except for historically, it kind of always has been. And currently there are things going on where like it seems like violence is the answer. So we have conversations about that, like what does it mean to fight? And yeah, I guess it's just a complicated conversation that we're constantly having. So then that kind of leads into the challenges of being a queer-centered school in the Southern United States in 2023. And the first challenge is safety. We are in a blue city, which is Athens, but we're surrounded by red. And we have protesters who come to,
The kids' youth group, they
Yeah.
came to the youth group this week.
yeah,
And we're standing outside and calling the parents' names and
yeah.
and it was, I don't know, it was really uncool.
So there are protesters who show up at queer events and have called our kids slurs, called adult slurs, told kids they're going to hell. It doesn't feel very safe when that stuff's going on. And then also there was the terrorist attack on the queer club.
Not in Athens.
Not in
though.
Athens, but in where was it? Colorado. And there's feelings of dangerous rhetoric going on a lot. And then also like the second thing is our students have trauma that we're often working on. We have a lot of our kids have come from public schools where they've been bullied in neighboring counties. And
They've lost friends.
yeah, every single one of our kids who is a student knows what it means to like lose family or friends when they come out. They've all been rejected by someone in their life who they're not in contact with anymore. And a lot of our students who've been in public school have been called slurs in the hallway, been said horrible things to them, and they have gone to the administration, and the administration isn't on their side in terms of this. They don't think, they're not going to like stand on the side of like the trans kid. They're actually on the side of the bully sometimes. So they end up having to leave that school and coming to us. And that's hard. Like, I'm glad we're here to offer this for them. But there is a lot of trauma that they're carrying. And we're working on that stuff. Another challenge is that we're a niche market. So we're a progressive school. Like, this is a business challenge, I guess. But we are like this alternative progressive school. And then within that, we're a queer school. So how many people is that?
So
and-
we're struggling.
And it's not even just like how many kids is that, it's how many families would be willing to send their kids to a queer school in Georgia. Because we accept all kids. Like, the kid doesn't have to be queer. They just have to be cool with queer stuff. That's our like one thing.
And so, support the other kids who are here.
Yeah. And we like our sex ed is attended by kids of all labels. Yeah. And it is like our sex ed is queer centered, but queer centered in our culture just means like equally queer as
it's like a comprehensive and good program.
Yeah, that's applicable to like exactly.
It's just a program that is actually applicable.
Yeah.
And helpful.
Yeah. So, but we do know that the kids that we can provide school for do have families who are supportive. So that's the niche market thing. And then another thing that's a challenge is we worry about state laws that take away the rights of our kids and could make our school, it could challenge our school's existence. So this week, the Senate in Georgia, the state Senate dropped a bill. So it hasn't passed anything yet. They just proposed it and it'll go to committee on Monday, and then there'll be hearings on it and we could go talk. But it's SB 88 and it's a Children and Parental Protections Act is the name of the bill, something like that. And it's most of these bills wouldn't affect our school because we aren't a public school. So we fall out of some of them in other states, but in Georgia, it's the bill is targeting if you're in loco parentis, then it applies to you. So that's like a pretty broad, and it does apply to us because we are in loco parentis. So in loco parentis is just like if you are in a position where you are in place of the parent, you are responsible for the kid. So like teachers and other, like if you're a camp counselor at a camp, you can be in loco parentis. So different things like that. So it's a pretty broad way of saying it. But it is basically like, if you're going to talk to kids about these really specific things, you have to get signed agreements by all legal guardians of the kids. And then even if you do that, it can challenge, like we're trying to become a nonprofit now, and it can challenge your nonprofit status. We can lose like our business license and things. It's like, so those are things that we have to worry about in Georgia. And other states have it even, there's more challenges. Like West Virginia proposed a bill that it's considered like sexual abuse if you expose a kid to transgender.
It's not even labeled.
Yeah,
the way that
it's like they're all poorly worded
because they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, but it basically makes it illegal for a transgender person to be within 2,500 feet of children. So basically illegal for like trans people to exist. That hasn't gone anywhere yet in West Virginia, but they're proposing these like very like aggressive ones. And they're also coming after puberty blockers and hormone treatments for kids. And we do have students who are on those medications.
And it is significantly improving their mental health.
So like it is like these medications are
life-saving.
It's like they're life-saving.
Literally, our kids are coming into school and saying, I want to kill myself.
Yeah.
And we are having conversations with them about these things.
Yeah.
And getting them connected to therapists
Mm-hmm.
and supporting them getting medicines and things.
And it is not easy to get these medications. I think there's like assumptions or like rhetoric from some news organizations that are saying that puberty blockers are overprescribed. It is very hard for kids to get on these medications. There's so many steps and so many doctors are involved and families have to be supportive. It's very, there doesn't need to be more like barriers for them getting it. I don't think, and that, well, I think that's just true, but like our kids just seeing the difference it's made for them. So that hasn't been proposed in Georgia yet, but it could be. Like all of our neighboring states have proposed bills or found ways to enact bills, or like Florida did it in a weird way, but that's something we're learning, that our kids are learning about state government, is that if they can't pass a law on something, they'll find another way to do it, to take away like trans rights. And that happened in Georgia last year, but I'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah, we should keep going.
Cool. Yeah, I'll go on and on. So we have a self-directed space and we have a queer space, and those spaces overlap a lot in a lot of cool ways. So we say that like we're a queer-centered space, and we're also queering the idea of knowledge, because it's not like this person has authority and therefore knows things. Like your knowledge in the self-directed space, your knowledge comes from inside yourself, and there's nothing gayer than your knowledge
Oh my
coming from
God.
inside yourself.
But also we have access in the self-directed spaces to the wider community. We have access to experts. We have access to the internet. We have access to all these things. It's really great.
Yeah. And so there's real learning that happens where these kids who are passionate and they're in this space where either their rights or their friends' rights are like on the line, they're able to actually make differences. So like our holidays are elaborate and weird, but usually celebrating something that is pretty core to our culture and is sometimes like under attack. So we have like Trans Remembrance Day, which is about that's not specific to our school, but our school celebrates it. But it's remembering the trans people who've been murdered over the last like calendar year.
And that's a really we have a ceremony. It's really solemn and serious.
Yeah.
And beautiful.
And we have a ceremony for Coming Out Day, which is that's another like solemn one. And then we have silly ones like Fish Day this week, which is another celebration.
Yeah.
We've also been to a lot of protests.
Totally optional.
Yeah, totally optional, but they all want to go. And we're going to be protesting this month because that new thing was proposed and they all really want to go. And there might be a chance for them to speak against this bill. But sometimes we've been to protests and there are counter protesters, and that's where they might be being called like slurs, and it might get kind of intense. Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's just really intense in those places. And when we've gone and protested at the state capitol, like representatives at the state level come up to our kids and like question them about things in a way that they're not all on our kids' side, and our kids like
some were, and
some
so
were
nice and supportive.
So our kids get to meet state representatives, and with supportive state representatives is really cool. And then they also have state representatives who come up to them, and then they realize like, oh, some of these adults are not cool, I guess, like accepting. The Seats of Justice was a project that they did last semester where the district attorney in our county
put out a call for public art.
Yeah.
Or student art specifically.
Yeah. And they took this chair and they made this very, it was supposed to be like, take a chair and turn it into a representation of what justice means to you. And our kids made this chair that was a depiction of how they felt about justice. And it had barbed wire on it. It had a clay bird that had passed away, but it was never alive because it was clay, but it was
It was
graphic.
supposed to be a dove.
Yeah, it was supposed to be a dove
They
that
had
had like
very big
died.
feelings about it.
Yeah, but they also put, there was like a brick on the bottom representing Stonewall. There was a pink triangle. There were like little things hinting at all these things about like queer history. And it was like, and then towards the top, there was like this beautiful dove painted on the top. So it's kind of about how like the beautiful idea of justice exists, but like foundationally, it's all built off these things that like some, like it's not for everybody, the justice. And this was made by kids who had, the week they made it, they'd been called slurs and told they're going to hell in the streets of Athens, and nobody seemed to care. They had been like, they came to our school because they had to retreat from their public schools because they were called slurs in the hallway and bullied without any recourse.
Well, and we'd spent a whole semester doing a history class.
Oh yeah.
They asked for a queer history class, and we offered that. And then we had a literature class.
Queer lit, you know?
Yeah, it was high school level lit, and then the pieces we were reading were from queer authors. That was really cool.
And they cried. There was
They
one,
did.
they were like, I'm not even a poetry person, but because it was about their experiences and people living their experiences in a way that was like,
I think she pains.
okay, that was like, I don't know, it just hit them hard. So that was cool to use poetry to make teens cry. It's kind of, you know. But so the Seats of Justice program, the Seats of Justice art exhibit, they submitted this chair, and the district attorney saw their chair and was like, wow, these people are obviously saying something about justice that I need to hear. So wanted to come to the school. So they were able to meet with the district attorney, and they prepared for it. They like studied, they learned what the district attorney's like position is and what the district attorney can do for them. And
They visited because we had to go and pick up the art and drop off the art and do this.
yeah, they saw the office.
We got to see her office and meet her and all this stuff.
Yeah. So when she came and met with them, one kid in particular like led the conversation. And this is one kid who had to leave a school because he was being bullied. And that school is within our district attorney's like jurisdiction. So I just think it's really cool that there was a brick on the art display. And I always say that like to take a brick and use it in a way that gets someone in a position of power to come listen to you is the queerest thing you can do with a brick. So
in reference to
Stonewall. So the district attorney coming and talk to them because they used a brick in that way. And then him saying specifically the things he wanted her to do, like he had to educate her on things. They all had to educate her on things and I think they were surprised at how little she knew about trans rights in Georgia right now. And then he had specific things, and then he followed up with an email, like this week he emailed her, and it's, he's getting her to do something that could help the trans kids in the school that he left. And
it's really cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. Like he had to leave there, but if he does this right, but if he's able to get the district attorney to do what he's asking her to do, he'll make it safer for like the next trans kid in that school.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's pretty gay.
It's already like 8:17.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I go on and on. Okay. So it's cool that we get to do this, but it's really hard. It's emotionally draining and stuff. Yeah. But we feel like it really matters. And one of the coolest things is that in our space, they're not queer kids. They're just silly, goofy kids.
Yeah.
And we can talk more about that stuff, but we should move on to the
Let you ask questions. Right?
Yeah. We're gonna keep doing this though, is all this is kind of saying. All right. So do you all have questions or comments? And here are possible topics that we had listed here. Sorry, we can go on sometimes.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for providing that safe haven of a space, and knowing y'all a little bit that I know you, and I can imagine just how fun and how amazing it is to be there as well. Yeah, I mean, I guess one of the questions that's coming up is around the camps that you're offering right now. We're kind of in the midst of looking at camps and what direction you take with those.
Yeah, so we're doing we did a winter camp,
I
but
was trying to make them big so I could see them.
Okay, we did a winter camp, but we started with summer camps last year. It was our first year doing summer camps, and we did a week long for 2 different groups, and
They're arts themed.
they're arts themed. They're different from our agile learning days. We have the days are like prescriptive, like they come in and we have a lab that we do in the morning, followed by like
Did it work?
no, the workshop's in the afternoon. So we do like a lab, and then we do an activity that is there. It's a queer arts camp. So sometimes it was about like queer things, but sometimes it was about like conspiracy theories and like writing conspiracy theories. There's like a
Like
fun,
silly creative
yeah, it's
writing.
like silly creative time. And then in the afternoon, they worked on a workshop for their spotlight. And at the end of every week that we have a camp, we have a spotlight that they do, like a spotlight presentation. So they all collaborate on either, so far we've had a horror episode of a pilot for a horror television series. We've had a music video, an animated music video / play, weird hybrid thingy.
But they wrote an original song for that and then made a animated music video for it.
Yeah.
So it's like they come together and discuss what are we passionate about and how do we combine our passions to show off a cool project at the end of the week. But over the course of the camp, there's creative writing activity, there's a creative arts activity, there's a play-based creative, depending on what the group is here and interested in. There might be some music, there might be writing, there might be clay, there might be painting. And it's just an exposure to a lot of creative play with focused workshop times, because y'all are experts in certain areas.
Yeah.
Like, as a cartoonist, and you might have people come in who do some specific things too, and you'll offer like workshops.
Yeah. So I think the thing that works really well about it is that we have the morning is this time for like classes kind of, and then the afternoon is they're working on this thing that's going to like pull the whole week together and it's going to culminate. And what's happened every time so far is the workshop spotlight projects they're working on becomes their focus and their obsession. And then the classes are like, they're going to the classes and they're doing the stuff, but they're talking about the workshop the whole time. So I think like something that works for us really well with camps is having some culminating like project that's like going to take all the stuff and turn it into something at the end.
And it makes them work together. They're overcoming obstacles.
Yeah.
They're excited about showing off what they've learned. And then they usually have a display of some of the things they've made throughout the week.
Yeah.
And then Thea includes an awards, a silly, very I'm seeing you authentically kind of award. They're really special, but like she and Nora might give the kids like a title or something.
Yeah.
An award that's like that. And then they write a whole paragraph about all the things they did this week that makes them special in this area. And it's really sweet, and it means a lot to the kids and the parents.
And our goal is to make parents cry. And it works. Parents are so easy to make cry. It's great.
But it's really sweet. So it's mostly about seeing the kids, letting them play, have a lot of fun, and then make something that they're proud of at the end. And then they've had bands form now. They're off doing bands and things like that together. I don't know. Did I answer your question? Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, that helps. That helps a lot. That's cool. Nice.
It is just
Yeah.
nice to hear that you're doing so much to create safe spaces for kids who really need it. And the whole environment of letting them pursue their passions in lots of different ways. It can be so nurturing to young people.
Yeah.
So, and you're doing it in a context where there's probably more challenges than a lot of us even realize. I live in a blue city surrounded by a red ocean.
Yeah.
And our university is one that is LGBTQ /plus,
Yeah.
IA plus, friendly. But I still think even within that, there are just challenges that those of us who are straight don't even realize are there. And so for me, one of the things is I want to become more aware, but at the same time, asking people about their experiences, you just don't do that either. So
Yeah.
finding ways, how does your community connect with other communities to help educate others too. Because
Yeah.
it seems like education and raising awareness is a really big issue.
Yeah.
I just said that without thinking it through. I was just kind of going with where
Yeah,
my
no,
brain
that's, yeah.
was.
You could look into your local PFLAG chapter.
Yeah.
We've gotten involved with the PFLAG group.
And I'll go and I'll attend PFLAG, or one of us will attend PFLAG.
Do you know what
sometime.
PFLAG is?
Oh, it's Parents of Friends. Well, it's not, it doesn't stand for this anymore, but it originated from Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays.
It's
but
an
it's-
old
yeah.
organization.
But it's like a parent support group for queer youth, usually, but not always that. It's like anyone who is parents of friends of queer people.
Can come to these meetings. They're usually monthly.
Yeah, and so there'll be parents there usually, and they have questions, and I'm usually surprised in, I don't know, because we're in a bubble, I guess, because our school is queer and I tend to stick to queer spaces, just it's safer that way. But these parents aren't in queer culture. So sometimes I'm surprised with like the questions they're asking. Like a lot of these parents were present when their kids were being called slurs. Like they were there
They went to the
standing next to their
protest.
kids when their kids were being yelled at by grown men that they're going to hell. And then the next day we had a PFLAG meeting and they were talking about their kids were in trouble at school because they got upset about pronouns and they don't know how to like control their kids with their pronouns. And I did say something in that time because I was like, you were all like, why is this the thing
That y'all are
you're-
choosing to
yeah,
talk about today.
when you just saw and then our kids, because they're in Georgia or because maybe it's going on everywhere across the country, they think that being called slurs is part of the trans experience and that they just have to accept it and it's part of their life. And like, I try to remind them, like, you do not deserve to be called those things. You should not be called those things. And it's also true that their parents don't seem to know that their kids should not be called those things. So I told them that, like, your kids should not be called slurs. Like, that is not good, it is bad. And it should be, you should be mad, I guess. I shouldn't tell people how to feel, but in that instance I did.
You also probably have a local pride.
Yeah,
group.
yeah.
And your local pride group is a good group to get plugged into. I'm sure you could help organize events and like show up to things.
Yeah. And in terms of
Yep.
like reaching out and us educating, it's complicated by like visibility has been good for groups to get rights in the past. And we are starting to lean that way in some ways for like trans rights and queer rights, but it is also like coming with a lot of pushback. And so we're in Athens, which is pretty blue, but also not sometimes. And so like if we went to like the Board of Education or if we went to a public meeting and said, we're a queer-centered school, I don't feel safe doing that. And if we went to a public meeting and said, hey, there are trans kids getting bullied, we need to protect the trans kids, there's a pretty good chance that there's just a couple parents there who would be like, no, we should not protect trans kids, like going to the bathroom or on sports teams or existing because it'll hurt my kid or something like that. So we are cautious of, there's a lot of like allies who are like, let's bring the fight out and let's really fight. And it's like, no, just like meet with local leaders like privately is a safer way of doing it.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to like, right now Athens isn't having a big turmoil of parents who are like calling against trans rights. And we don't want to like trigger that. So for us in our space, it's better to talk to them like
Stay kind of hidden.
yeah. But I'm in a chat with state representative and someone from like the Georgia Association of Educators. And like when these bills pop up, I'm messaging with them and talking to them about like what we can do. So I think it's all like, we're not like blowing in a megaphone. We're trying to like kind of like, if we can stop this bill in another way, that's probably better. Yeah.
I have another question too, because when you do become a queer-centered school, you end up focusing so much on that. What about all the other issues in life the kids need to learn about? And how do you create a balance in your curriculum for environmental issues and
Yeah.
history that's not queer history, but the rest of history? And I mean, there's so much with maths and sciences and
Yeah. I think
integrated
Thea's
ways of
just
learning.
highlighting.
Yeah, I think,
Thea likes to talk about the queer classes,
Yeah.
but like
but we also,
their whole day is full of regular education.
yeah, coordinate geometry.
We have a book club.
Yeah,
We're reading a bunch of books together.
yeah.
There's so much. We have an art class.
So even being queer centered, our queer lit class is gonna like still be about American literature.
It's a normal American lit class
and we're
that hits all the 10th grade,
10th grade.
10th grade lit curriculum, except whenever we get to the end of the talking about this and we're going to read excerpts from people, Thea has specifically chosen one that may be more relevant to them. An author who is Black and queer, or an author who is young, and whatever, it's just,
Yeah.
we're choosing, sources
But I mean,
that matter more to
even
them.
mainstream schools don't always do education in really good ways as far as experiential project based and different things.
Yeah.
So just doing the curriculum that is normal to me is not, it's just like, well, okay, but how can you do
Yeah.
it better?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I agree.
And I like we also, our kids know about intersectionality a lot, and we use that, like the idea of intersectionality to talk about like race and
Yeah.
climate and other things. And we also
We
talk
did an
about
earth science class last fall.
Yeah.
It was 7th grade earth science.
Yeah. And we talk about how like oppressions are related. And when you're fighting any oppression, you're fighting all oppression. Because we do talk, and we're aware of like, when we're doing this kind of education that's privileged, and our families are accepting, and our families are able to accept the risk of their kids being self-directed, there are naturally like racist and classist things going on with our school. And we try to be
With all
anti-racist.
schools.
Yeah. And I can get hung up on like the problematic parts of everything I do. And I do that sometimes, and I need to like breathe and remember that fighting any oppression is fighting all oppression.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Does that kind of answer the question?
I just want to say, like, I don't feel like, I don't know. Yes, it's a queer centered school, but that doesn't mean all we do all day is talk about queer stuff. We have a full academic calendar of things that we're offering and doing.
Yeah. And go ahead.
I think it would be hard with just two of you to teach the whole range of things. I couldn't do it.
True. Yeah, we can't hit everything, and we don't. They are all supplementing in their own ways, or their plan with us may not include everything. We have kids who have a plan with their parents that involves staying on their grade level, and they have textbooks, and they're doing things alongside school to make sure that they're hitting those goals. And we have other kids who are having mental breakdowns, and their parents are like, please love my kid, help my kid feel safe doing math again, and let them make friends and take naps at school and learn how to be on a schedule and just they're thrilled their kids are happy to come to school every day. And that's step one.
Yeah. And for our parents too, when their kids was in public school, they were hearing from their teachers only about trans stuff. It was like, your kid is upset about pronouns, or like, I don't know how to do a trans kid in school. But we're never going to call their parents and be like, hey, your kid is trans and it's affecting something. We're going to talk to their parents about math and like the social and emotional health
things that are going on.
So it's like, it is a queer-centered space, so we get to lift up parts of queer culture, but it's also a queer-centered space, and therefore like parts of being queer go away, and they can actually focus on learning instead of, because it's also hierarchy of needs. When you're worried about in the hallway, what are you going to be called?
Yeah.
And how are you going to get bullied? Yeah.
It's true though, like we're not accredited and we're not going to hit everything.
Yeah.
And that's just an upfront conversation we have with parents. And they know that going into it. But if their kid is really passionate about something, we could take them leaps and bounds to wherever it is they're trying to go. We've had kids focus on a certain topic, and we'll get them internships in that area, and they're doing that 2 days a week. And, and we're supplementing all these other things with them.
And our kids learn how to learn, which sets them up for success in like college, or if they decide to go back to like a public high school at some point.
Yeah.
They know how to like be in charge of their own learning and do it. Like we have a kid now who's doing, and I love math, so I like do one-on-one tutoring with him often on like, he's doing coordinate geometry right now. but he's learning how to learn it. And then when he gets stuck, he'll ask me for help, and then we'll
Sit down
Cool,
and do
yeah.
one-on-one stuff.
yeah.
Good question though. I mean, that's a common one with alternative ed schools too, you know. How do we do the education?
Yeah.
Yeah, your model also reminds me, well, I worked at a community school in Seattle many years ago that was very much the morning meeting and figuring out what you're going to do and having offerings and things, but
Yeah.
it wasn't called ALC, it was just its own model that used humanistic psychology as kind of its foundation.
Yeah.
But what you do also reminds me of Sudbury Valley schools. And as you grow at some point, that Sudbury model might be something that interests you for kind of a democratic approach to education.
Yeah, we know
Maybe
about
you-
Sudbury
yeah.
schools. Yeah, and we specifically don't do Sudbury on purpose. There's a lot that they do that's really great. And I really like the way they do their like problem solving and community stuff, but they're more hands off than we are.
Mm.
And we prefer to have more structure to our day. We find the kids are getting more out of it. Just had a lot of success with this particular model. But yeah, I think there's a lot of people out there who really love Sudbury schools.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for sharing today. I really appreciated kind of being educated about what you're doing and how you're doing it. It was
Yeah,
very
thanks for having us, everyone.
Yeah.
Likewise, I was just going to ask one thing about adjustment, so they're learning how to learn, which is great, so they can go anywhere. And then what are their choices for schools to go in your area in to have a lot of
Another
choice.
classic question.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
keep listening.
Can we take the cord out?
Yeah.
My leg's cramped.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so this again looks very different depending on the kid and the family and what conversations we have with them. We've had kids go off happily to public school, into high school.
They usually have to do a test. They have to do a test.
They'll have to take a regular test, a placement test, to make sure that they've got the skills to go on to the next grade, and they've all been very successful at that. We've had students who will stay homeschoolers and then will dual enroll at the local tech school, which is cool. So they go and take a couple classes at the local college. We have a tech college and then we have UGA, but they'll go get into the tech college and take certain classes, and they've really enjoyed that. There's a really cool school near us called Foothills. We've had a student who went, he did a really cool thing. He was a kid who was really into garbage trucks when he was little, and he continued to be very into garbage trucks. And now he is 17. But we had him for quite a number of years, and he continued to be really passionate about this. So we're like, okay, let's hook you up. He made a YouTube channel where he was filming the local waste management team coming through town and doing things. And he had views and did video editing. He got an internship at the waste management department, and they let him file paperwork and design a Christmas card for them in his first few years. Then they taught him how to drive the trucks. They weren't really supposed to, but they let him go on rounds and they were doing things with him. He ended up going to a conference and doing a presentation. And so he created and he wrote an essay and turned it into a presentation. And that was part of his academic study while doing other regular school. But he had an internship that was multiple days a week that we dropped him off at, and his parents picked him up at the end of the day. And he has gone on, and his plan has always been from the very beginning to get his license to become a garbage man. And he, in order to do that, has to do a few certain things. And he wants to get a GED and pass this test and get his certifications. And he has been interning at this place since he was 12. And he knows everyone, and he is on track to do it. And he is finishing up high school right now at Foothills Charter School. And he goes and takes night classes in math and science and a few things, and is ready to start in a year or so. And it's very cool. But he's off doing his thing. And we have other kids who are currently enrolled in colleges and thriving. Everyone does it a little differently. Just depends on who you are and where you're at, and we'll help you make a plan to get there. But requirements aren't the same as they've been in the past. Things are more flexible, and colleges are looking at who are you as a person? Are you interesting? Are you passionate? What sort of things have you been doing? Do you care? Do you just have the same grades in public school that everyone else has? That's not enough anymore. It's not the same. Actually be a passionate person. Have done cool things that you care about. That's what's going to get you into college now. And it's showing. That's what we're seeing across the board. So we help the kids design a portfolio that shows all the really cool things that they've been doing for the last few years.
And they don't, sometimes
And then they
don't
pass the
know.
test.
Yeah.
And they go on, and it's gone great.
And a lot of times the kids don't know what they're learning. With like talking to the DA, to them, that was all, they did an art project and it was real and they were getting prepared, but they learned.
We studied history leading up to the art project
Yeah.
that they turned into a thing that they presented publicly.
Yeah.
It was politics, it was civics. They
Yeah.
went to a courthouse and a DA's office and did a presentation at the library. I mean, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
just that is so much.
Like what 14-year-old has talked to the district attorney,
Written
knows
a,
what a
written
district
a
attorney is.
professional
Yeah.
email
Yeah. And like,
asking for help on something that
and
you
s-
actually care about.
and cited statements that the district attorney has made in the past as like evidence for what she can do.
I mean, that
now.
is learning.
Yeah.
And then you can put that on a portfolio, like, wow.
But he doesn't think of it as learning or as an assignment or anything.
It's just something he cares
Yeah.
about. And that happens to all our kids in all their passion areas.
I just spent 6 hours with a group of teachers in training and helping them to understand what authentic assessment is. And you guys are
Yes.
lots of really good examples.
Yeah. If this kid gets the district attorney to protect trans kids in the school he used to go to, he gets an A. If he doesn't, if he doesn't, maybe an A minus, I don't know. Yeah.
Well, y'all are really inspirational to me, and I just appreciate you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Impressive.
Yeah. It's cool that there's people out there doing this stuff. And yeah, like fighting oppression anywhere is fighting all oppression. So like pushing
Yeah.
for like true education anywhere is like education's evolving.
It is.
Yeah.
And there's resources and there's people everywhere. We're out here, everyone, all states. There's a network of all these cool alternative ed people. And I really think we share so many values, even if you're focused on sustainability or environmentalism, like they're everywhere in every state, and you can find the people to connect with. We'll just stay a network.
And we're gonna win. Not that it's a competition.
They're going to evolve in better ways. They have to
Yeah.
That's right.
Eventually.
eventually.
Well, thanks everyone.
Yeah.
We'll try to come into more of
you.
the discussions. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, please. That would be great.
I think we have another one in 2 weeks from now, I believe. Yeah, the website will be updated and we'll send the email out.
Sounds good. Good luck with all of your things, everyone.
Thanks to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Have a good
Bye.
evening.
Bye.
Bye.